wonder what your life would be like if you dropped out of high school? Well, for actor Michael Shannon, it put him on the path to being nominated for an Academy Award by the age of 34. I'm Elysabeth Alfano, host of the Dinner Party podcast on WGNplus.com, where the best conversations happen over dinner. Michael Shannon joins me in the studios today over cumin salmon, a salad of corn, humanely raised pork pancetta and arugula, and roasted potatoes. Michael and I dish on his acting career and why he still loves to come back to Chicago and perform at a Red Orchid Theater. A bit more about Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon was born in Kentucky, but moved to Chicago as a kid to be with his father. He attended Evanston Township High School, but dropped out to pursue acting. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his performance in Revolutionary Road in 2008. He played Nelson Van Alden in the HBO period drama series Boardwalk Empire from 2010 to 2014. His performance in the 2011 film Take Shelter led to further acclaim, gaining him the Saturn Award for Best Actor. He played a riveting Richard Kuklinski in The Iceman, and then General Zod in Man of Steel. Michael Shannon is a co-founding member of Chicago's Red Orchid Theater and continues to play there, as he will this fall, in a play called Pilgrims Progress, opposite Kirsten Fitzgerald. In addition, Michael will appear in 4 movies this fall: 99 Homes and Freeheld, both of which are out in theaters now, and The Night Before, a holiday comedy with Seth Rogen, out this November. The film Elvis and Nixon with Kevin Spacey should be out before January. And a 5th movie, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, in which Michael again plays General Zod, will be out in 2016. Our salmon, salad, and potatoes are ready, so I'm going to set the table. After we hear from the greatest sponsor on the planet and in the kitchen, I'll be right back with actor Michael Shannon. Stobe cookware. Stobe cookware is the gold standard in cooking. All of my chefs use it on my live event and celebrity roundtable TV talk show, The Dinner Party with Elysabeth Alfano, because it's the very best in the kitchen. What sets Stobe cookware apart? It's the construction, the durability of it, the craftsmanship of it, the history of it. It goes back all the way to famed French chef Paul Bocuse, and it is the Mercedes-Benz of cookware. Michael Shannon, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
So I have to tell you, usually when I do this, I order in food from a restaurant. But Kirsten, the artistic director of a Red Orchid Theater, she and I put this together at the last minute. So I really didn't have time to go to a restaurant. So I went to my boyfriend and I said, do something. What can you make really fast? And so my boyfriend made all of this last night.
Wow, last night, huh?
Yeah, I have to tell you, he's a great cook.
He really is, yeah. What did he put on this salmon?
He did his...
like a rub.
So that's so my boyfriend, he made it himself. So he doesn't use anything from a bottle, like every little piece of the thing he has to make himself. So this is a rub of cumin that he made, and then he put it on. Yeah. And when I told him that you were coming in today, and, he was like, oh gosh, maybe I'll make Korean snacks. And I was like, oh baby, please, no, we don't have to go there. I don't even know this guy. Let's just keep it like salmon and salad. We'll keep it down the middle.
What, like kimchi nachos or something?
Oh, you have no idea. Oh, he lives for kimchi. Wow. It's sort of a thing between us because we get along so well. Really, we're just such a good couple, but I hate kimchi.
Really?
Yeah. And so that's like a point of angst between us because he's always trying to get me to like it.
Well, it is rotting food, right? That's what it is.
That's a nice way to say it. Yeah. Yeah. Do you cook at all? Because I know you have 2 girls.
Well, no, I don't really cook much at all. I mean, I'll cook them a meal if it's a last resort, if I'm the only one that is there. But they're better off being fed by other people.
So do you guys order out a lot? Because I know now you live in Brooklyn.
We don't order out too much. Kate likes to cook a lot. Their mother, she loves to cook, and there's a couple of little restaurants in our neighborhood we like. But no, I mean, we don't eat out too much. The kids, at least.
Well, I have to tell you, I was sort of nervous for this interview because I've seen you interviewed before.
Oh, really?
Rick Kogan on Chicago Live, and there were a couple of times he asked you questions, and you gave him one-word answers. And I thought, for a podcast, this could get tricky. So I just want to tell everyone, I've poured us some bourbon. I'm not saying we're going to go there. I'm not saying we're going to need it.
Right.
But if we get to a point in the podcast where you start giving me one-word answers, then maybe I'll just pour some more bourbon, and we'll just see.
You need me to loosen up? Is that what
we'll see how the interview goes. Well, do you like bourbon?
Well, I am from Kentucky originally.
That's what I thought.
The
okay.
home of bourbon.
Well,
Bourbon County. If it's not from Kentucky, it's not bourbon, technically.
Uh-oh, crap. This may not be from Kentucky, but if you do like bourbon, I highly recommend you try it. It's called Jefferson's Ocean, and it's really smoky.
Smoky,
It's like a smoky bourbon that I haven't ever tasted a taste like this before. But, of course, no pressure.
It smells good.
Okay.
I'm on the fence. I'm supposed to do a performance tonight, so I don't...
Well,
usually I get worried if I might not be able to focus or something.
Fair enough. Like I say, no pressure. Right. It's just here if we ever get to the point of the podcast where we feel like we need it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me go back a little ways. You were, like you said, were born in Kentucky, and then you came here. Your parents were divorced, and you came here to see your father, and you went to Evanston Township High School.
I went there briefly. The beginning of my senior year. My freshman and sophomore year, I actually went to New Trier High School. At the time, my father was living in Wilmette. And then my junior year, I went back down to Kentucky to Henry Clay High School, home of the Blue Devils. And then my senior year, I came back up, and my father had moved to Evanston. And that's when I went to Evanston Township. But I only went for one semester. I actually wound up dropping out in the middle of the year.
As a senior then? Mm-hmm. Well, so I wanted to ask you, because, when you drop out at 16, 17 years old, what did you think life had in store for you? How did you imagine it going? And then, of course, what it is today.
Well, I basically dropped out to do plays. I mean, I stopped going to school and I started auditioning for plays. I found this newspaper called Perform Inc. I'm not even sure if it's still around. Probably is, but it's a newspaper for the Chicago theater community, entertainment community, and in the back they had listings of auditions, and I just started auditioning for plays, and it was kind of fortuitous because there were 3 opportunities I got kind of back to back to back, where there were plays they were looking for teenage men, basically young men, and there were just 3 parts that I kind of fit into, because that's kind of unusual. It's not every play that features
teenage boy.
Yeah. So that was very helpful to get my little career started, and then. Yeah, I just kept doing plays in Chicago. I didn't really think much about the future. I still don't really. I mean, not in an ambitious way, not in like, people are always asking like, what's your goal or your dream or whatever. And I don't have an answer to that. I guess you're supposed to, but I don't have one.
Well,
I just like to do what I do.
So I was going to ask you this question later, but maybe I'll ask it now. You don't have a goal. You like to do what you do. Do you consider yourself a star?
A star? No. I mean, it would be disingenuous for me to not admit that I've done enough work, that it's gotten me to the point where when I walk down the street, people, recognize me. Most people. Some people don't. I mean, there's nobody that everyone in the world know. I mean, there's places Tom Cruise could go and nobody would know who he was,
A baseball hat does wonders.
Yeah, or, you can go to Easter Island, somebody with
not much work on Easter Island,
yeah.
but not many plays going on.
Yeah, well, maybe it's time to start. But I don't know really what difference it would make. To me, I don't know what difference it would make what I consider myself. I mean, it would be very awkward, uncomfortable to think of myself that way, because honestly, there's just a lot of pressure along with that to be special all the time, and I don't feel special all the time. Who does?
Very few people, I think, actually.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, you say a lot of people are starting to recognize you, or more people are starting to recognize you. But the little I know about you, you seem like a guy who kind of flies under the radar. Is that true? Do you keep to yourself, or are you more of a people person?
Well, I know a lot of people. I was thinking about this actually the other day. I know a lot of people, but I don't have a lot of friends. I have a lot of acquaintances, a lot of professional working relationships. Very few actual close friends, and I'm very busy, so I'm usually either working, or in the little bit of time I have that I'm not working, I'm trying to spend as much time with my children as possible. So I don't have a lot of time to fraternize or raise hell like I used to. It's usually just work or a family.
Well, I wonder if this kind of helps you get the roles that you get, because you get a lot of characters that are disengaged a bit from society, or just on the verge of cracking, either under pressure or in anger, or they're disassociated somehow. And I wonder if this sort of keeping to yourself has attracted those roles to your personality and vice versa.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I have a very stubborn habit of looking at all my characters as very distinctive individual people. So I understand people's desire to categorize what I do, but I don't necessarily agree with it. But, I have 2 movies out right now. Like 2 movies right now in a movie theater.
99 Homes and Freeheld.
99 Homes and Freeheld. And in 99 Homes, I play what a lot of people would consider to be a very unscrupulous, sinister person. And in Freeheld, I play a very kind-hearted, decent cop who tries to help his best friend. And nobody's going to see Freeheld. Nobody really is going to see it. The company, the distribution company, is actually probably going to pull it out of the theaters very soon.
For
but
VOD?
99 Homes, while not being a huge box office smash, is doing much better. So that kind of, to me, indicates that I think people are more interested in watching some sort of conflict. There's not really a conflict in Freeheld. I mean, it's just a very heartwarming, beautiful story, but there's not a lot of tension, or it's not a thriller, So I don't know. I think it has more to do with what people want to see. I mean, ever since the Greeks, the Greeks didn't write a bunch of plays about people having lunch together and riding bicycles. They wrote plays about very epic, tragic events, and people were compelled to watch them because of that.
In a recent Chicago Magazine article, which I thought was a really great article, actually, you said that there are no emotions in your acting, and
yeah, It's not that. It's not necessarily that there are none. It's that it's not my main objective. It's not. I think a lot of people look at acting as, a good actor can cry a lot or gets upset, and to me, the emotions. It's not that there's no emotions. That would be frightening. I'd be a sociopath, which I'm not. But it's that they're not. To me, that's not what's interesting about it. What's interesting about it is studying people, who they are, and why they are who they are. And the emotions are just they're a byproduct. They're not the focal point for me anyway of what I do.
It's fascinating because I've interviewed a bunch of actors and a lot of them say the same, that they aren't that social, but that they're fascinated by human nature and looking at what makes this character go that way and what makes another character hide under the bus or whatever, what makes people tick, really.
Yeah.
So I wonder, is that what you think makes you a good actor? What makes you a good actor?
Oh, gee, I haven't the slightest idea what makes me a good actor. I really don't know. I mean, people ask me all the time for advice or, how do you do it? Or people suggest, like, maybe you could teach a class or something. And I don't know what I would say. I mean, I think I really relish I really relish what I do. Mm-hmm. I really relish so many factors of what I do. Right now I'm working on this play at Red Orchid, my theater company, Red Orchid Theater, called Pilgrims Progress. And it's a fascinating play. It's very bizarre, and it's very kind of hard to follow. It's very mysterious. And these are all things that I really enjoy. I enjoy the mystery of it, trying to solve that mystery of events and people and characters and stories. I mean, one of my favorite writers of all time is Eugene Ionesco. He's a playwright, originally from Romania, but he lived in France most of his life, and he had a point of view that all stories are detective stories. It's even a line in one of his plays, and that's always really resonated with me a great deal. So I don't know. I think to the extent that I could pontificate about what makes me a good actor without sounding like a complete douchebag, I guess it would be the fact that I like doing it so much.
Mm-hmm. And that's what drives you. I know that you and Tracy Letts have worked together a lot, and you did Killer Joe early on when you were living permanently in Chicago, and you did Bug and originated that role with him as the writer. And I wondered what you learned from Tracy Letts, because you've said that he's been an influence for you.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the first plays I ever did in Chicago, it was the second play I ever did. It was two plays by Howard Corder, who incidentally wound up being a writer on Boardwalk Empire all those years later. But anyway, the plays were called Fun and Nobody. And the first play, Fun, is about these two teenage boys who are ditching school. And it's funny, I was really 16 at the time, and then the guy playing my friend was in his 20s. But he was a very good actor called Joey Slotnick, named Joey Slotnick, who's gone on to do quite well for himself as well.
Absolutely.
So it was the two of us cutting school, goofing around, meeting all kinds of weird, unusual people, and getting into trouble. And then the second act was a play called Nobody. And the second act was about my character's father getting laid off from his job and coming home and basically losing his marbles. And my father was played by Tracy Letts. Now, Tracy, at the time when he was playing my father, was only 25 years old, he was only 9 years older than me. But he's always had this sense of authority and wisdom and just a power, innate gravity that everyone was really in awe of, particularly at that time.
Yeah.
It was a very exciting time in Chicago theater. This is the early 90s. It was just blossoming, full of such talented, unique people, and he was kind of the leader of that pack, and everybody looked up to him. And I was in awe of him, and he was my dad. He played my dad, and I got to do that play. And a fellow named Dexter Bowler directed that play. Another very significant relationship for me. I've worked with Dexter countless times since then. So it was just the stars really lined up there. I mean, that's fate, there's no other way to put it. Meeting Tracy, meeting Dexter, working with Joey on a play that Howard wrote, and all of these people going on to be important parts of my life. So, but yeah, since, when I did Fun and Nobody with Tracy, he kind of took a shine to me as well, I guess, and when he wrote Killer Joe, he asked me if I would come do a reading of it at his apartment. And it was interesting because I think he had done a few readings of it with Jim True Frost, who's a Steppenwolf Ensemble member. But for some reason, Jim wasn't available for this reading or whatnot, so Tracy had me read the part, and the rest is history. I actually have a picture on my phone if you want to see it.
I do.
I mean, this won't do much good for
no, but I can describe it.
People on the pod.
Drinking won't do much good for them either, but we've got that too.
This is going to take a minute, so
okay. Okay.
But anyway, I don't know if I'm really answering your question. I'm just kind of.
I know that
it's hard to sum up what Tracy's meant to me. I mean, his plays, Killer Joe and Bug, have basically. Had I not done those plays, I may never have left Chicago.
Right.
Those plays. The first time I left North America was to do Killer Joe at the Edinburgh Festival in Scotland. That was back when you could still smoke on airplanes.
That was a while ago.
Yeah.
Well, I think you were very lucky early on. I mean, many people don't leave high school and get roles right away, and then they're working with people who are immediately their mentors with incredible scripts.
Right.
I mean, things lined up for you, and I'm sure there have been many, many tough times along the way, of course.
Well, yeah.
It's not an easy business. But
there were those first 3 shows. Winter Set at the Illinois Theater Center, Fun and Nobody at Next Lab, which is now no longer there.
Right.
And a play called Loving Little Egypt at the Griffin Theater. And I did those 3 kind of back to back to back. And then I didn't get anything for like a year. And that was a tough year. That's when I started to think, well, maybe dropping out of school was a bad idea. But I just stuck with it, and it came back around. Here it is. This is a picture of
hand it over.
Tracy. This is the original cast of Killer Joe.
Oh, God, and you have this on your phone.
Well, somebody just sent
scanned
it to
for
me.
you. Wow. Wow, everyone has 90s hair, basically. Yeah. Look at your hair, too. Wow, you really look like a kid here. This is great.
I was, in that picture, I was probably 19.
You know, it's funny. You look at pictures like this before everybody gets famous, and, you're in, basically like somebody's living room practicing, it looks like.
Yeah, we'd probably just done a reading, or, I don't know, we would socialize a lot, too. I mean, there was a lot of socializing back then, parties and going to the tavern and whatnot.
Well, so fast forward from that to in 2008, you're nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah.
And at that time, you were, I'm going to say, relatively unknown. I mean, of course, you've done a lot of plays, but people maybe didn't see you on the big screen that much.
Yeah.
And if they did, they saw you in smaller roles. And I'm wondering, when you read that script, did you think, okay, this is going to be a role that I can really knock out of the park? Or
Revolutionary Road?
Yeah.
No, I never look at things that way. I don't really care whether they make me more or less successful. I just love the book.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of kismet because right before I got Revolutionary Road, I actually was in a real dry spell. I hadn't worked for a while. I was running out of money. I was broke. I just started seeing Kate, and Kate gave me that book as a gift. She's like, "Oh, this is one of my favorite books. You should read this." And I read it. I couldn't put it down. I read it in like a couple of days, and I thought it was hysterical. And that part in particular is just. It just really rang my bell, you know. So, and I didn't know they were making a movie out of it. My agents hadn't gotten me an audition or anything. I just read about it in the paper, in the newspaper, that Leonardo Dicaprio was set to do Revolutionary Road because it was a big story. It was reuniting him and Kate and Kathy, the Titanic trio, you know. Yeah. And I picked up the phone. I said, I've got to audition for this right now. I said, I don't even care what part. I want to be involved in this movie. I love this book so much. And that was that. And then they said, well, you can read for John or you can read for Shep. I was like, well, you tell me. And the casting director said, why don't you read for John? So I went in and did it. And now I had known Sam Mendes from when I did some theater in London, and he had seen that, so I think that helped a little bit. There was a faint familiarity. We weren't like buddies or anything, but he had seen me do some stuff in London.
Wow, so I wouldn't have thought this coming into this interview, but fate has kind of played a big role for you, because had she not given you that book, and books are the greatest gift, I think, often. Had she not given you that book, you might not have cared that Leonardo DiCaprio was doing Revolution. You would have been like, Revolutionary Road, that means nothing to me.
If I hadn't read the book, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known. And he's such a brilliant writer. I recommend all his work, particularly his short stories. There's a book, 11 Kinds of Loneliness. It's really...
I haven't read that, but I've heard it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, so you bring up Leonardo DiCaprio, and I have to say, I think he is a phenomenal actor. Mm-hmm. You've worked with many of my favorites, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Martin Scorsese, and Leonardo DiCaprio. So if you could just work with Meryl Streep, then you'd have all my favorites. But I wonder... Leonardo, what was it like to work with him? And did you learn anything from him and Scorsese? All three of them, Philip Seymour Hoffman. I'm wondering if these people were as large, close up to them for their knowledge and skill and craft as it appears on screen.
Well, Leo's a very, very humble guy. He's a real knock around guy, you know. He came up... I think he was raised very well. You know, his mom was always around. She was a very nice woman. And he came up, you know, working with great people, and he just seems to have a lot of respect, you know, for other people. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who is totally probably entitled to be a complete a-hole if he wanted, you know, but he just really goes out of his way to, you know, working on that movie, you know, I was sitting in that house, and I would look around at the company I was in, and it was hard not to get a little flustered, you know, because that is the Titanic trio there, you know, and Leo is one of the biggest stars, and Kate's no slouch either, and Kathy, you know, it's it's just very, but the all three of them were very decent people. They were very kind, and very they realize that it behooves them to make the people around them feel comfortable, particularly the other artists, because people don't do good work when they're nervous or when they're anxious. I don't think. I mean, the better stuff happens when you're not necessarily comfortable, but just more relaxed.
Right, not looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. But Phil was an amazing artist, obviously. I did that film Before the Devil Knows You're Dead with him, but what I really know about Phil, I learned from
theater.
He directed me in a play.
Yeah, in London, no?
It was in New York, actually.
Okay.
It was with his company, the company he was with there. I'm now with them, I guess, as well. The Labyrinth Theater Company. And it was an extraordinary play, The Little Flower of East Orange. It's by one of their resident playwrights, Stephen Adley Gerges, who's a very, very fine writer. I believe they're doing something of his at Steppenwolf this season. But this play was deeply personal because it was basically about Stephen losing his mother, and that had been a big deal, not just for Stephen, but for the whole company, because they're a very tight-knit company. And Stephen and Phil were very, very close. So it was a very intimidating thing to be in the middle of as an outsider, because I wasn't really part of the family. But they brought me in, but Phil held a very high standard. I think for Phil, the work, it was definitely a sacred thing. There was nothing frivolous about it, and he was very demanding, and he wanted complete commitment and fearlessness, and he wanted you to excavate to the deepest level that you were capable of. And he always thought you were capable
of more,
going deeper. So, but it was that relentlessness, I think, that the same relentlessness that he applied to himself. He was a relentless artist. It's part of the reason I think that life was so difficult for him. He was very hard on himself. And I remember one day at the rehearsal hall, I'll never forget this, because most of the play was set in a hospital room, and we had a hospital bed for my mother, who was being played by Ellen Burstyn.
Another incredible actor.
Yeah, she's something else. Yeah, and so it was lunch break, and everybody was gone. I walked into the room, and it was just Phil was in the room, and he was laying in the hospital bed, and he was staring at the ceiling, and he looked very morose. And I walked over to the bed. I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And he just looked at me. He said, "You're going to understand someday, Shannon. You're going to understand someday." I was like, whoa, I hope not.
What do you think he meant? The pressure that comes with these kind of roles?
You get overwhelmed,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you get to a certain point, and I don't know why. It's not like I expect it or I deserve it, but it just happened. You get to a certain point where you could literally work every minute of your life until you fell into a hole and still not do all the projects that everybody wants you to do.
Yes.
I mean, there's just people all the time saying, do this, do that, come here, come there. And they don't take no for an answer. People don't take no for an answer, You say no, and then a week later they say, are you sure? Please? It's really important. And, and I'm sure, Phil, I mean, everybody wanted Phil. Who didn't want Phil?
He was incredible. Yeah. An incredible power. Yeah.
So I think he probably just I think what did he say one day? He said, some days I wish I could hop in a car and just drive in the middle of nowhere and like work at a gas station.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to be making Phil sound like he didn't appreciate. Of course he appreciated it. He worked very hard to get where he was. He spent a long time working very, very hard to get where he was. And he loved what he did. And he loved his theater and his family. And I don't mean to paint him as some sort of, ungrateful person. But it does get, there are days when you think you just can't take it.
I laugh not because it's funny, but I laugh because I think everyone listening knows exactly what he means.
Yeah.
I laugh because I don't think that is such an out there thing to say, actually.
Yeah.
Certainly at his level,
Yeah.
Most people don't experience that.
Right.
But I think many people feel like Facebook, Twitter, kids, job, bills, boss. What
Right.
the F? I just want to go to the beach and put a towel on my face and forget it.
Right.
Sit in a corner by myself and get some quiet at all. And there's not really quiet for many people. And then his added pressure, it just doesn't surprise me that much.
Yeah, he had a lot of. He had a lot of. I don't even know. I wouldn't want to claim to be like an expert. There are people that knew Phil a lot better than I did, but from the limited time I spent with him, there were some tough shoes to walk in. Yeah.
And what was it driving behind that? Was it the work in theater or was it the work in movies? Because I know that you love theater, and we will talk about this. You're a co-founder of a Red Orchid Theater.
Right.
And again, you're going to be playing in Pilgrims Progress this fall. So until...
Yeah, we open the first weekend in November.
Right. November 4th, I think, are press openings or something, and then it goes through December 13th.
Right.
So for you, what do you prefer, theater or movies, and where does that pressure come from? I'm guessing it's more movies than theater, but maybe not.
Well, I love doing theater. I mean, I've always loved doing theater, as long as the script's interesting and the people I'm working with are talented. So films are a lot of pressure. Films are like, because you don't get to keep doing it. You just do it and then it's done, and then it's frozen. And that's what people are going to see. And I really enjoy repetition. Because I just feel like there's always more to consider. And
reinterpretations of the character, you mean, and of the writing?
Not even necessarily. Excuse me. It can be very minute, esoteric details.
Uh-huh.
I mean, your mind spins off in so many different directions. I find myself, because here's the thing, is I think human beings, by and large, communicate very poorly. I think most people are not really understood by other people or capable of understanding other people. So I think it's one of the reasons I got into this to begin with, because you really study the art or the act of human beings communicating with one another. Like, how do people let other people know what's happening to them from their point of view? Because you operate under the basic assumption that we're all the center of our own universes, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's hard, unless you do like a lot of meditating and are very disciplined, it's hard not to fall into that point of view. But with acting, you really can like get out of yourself. And it's not that you're, becoming another person necessarily. It's not like, I insist that everybody call me by my character's name or something, because that's just silly. But through the repetition, you're really able to study how people coexist with one another, like, and what the what the boundaries of that is, what the possibilities are, it's hard for me to put into words, but it's not like I want to keep doing it because one night I want to try a French accent or something. It's more like it's just studying. It's studying the script and studying the people I'm on stage with and listening, really listening, listening is a skill.
Yes.
Most people don't understand that. They assume that because they can hear, they can listen. But very few people really listen well at all to anything. So
I think what you're saying is fascinating about how people communicate, because I think the reason people don't communicate well, which is one of the things that I think is so fascinating about theater, because in theater, contrary to films, you get to see the personalities really flesh out, whereas in film, for me, it feels like things move faster, so you're not getting that level of depth in a character. Right. But I think the reason people don't communicate well, but something that is really looked at in theater, is that people don't know themselves how they feel often. Right. So they can't communicate that very well because they haven't fully understood it.
Yeah, and it's funny because in acting classes, you're always, a lot of times the teacher, the instructor is trying to pressure you or navigate you into knowing how you feel and knowing what you want and knowing this and knowing that. And I that approach never really made any sense to me because it's like, people don't know. They don't know what they want. They don't know how they feel. They don't know. People don't know anything. Like, people are they're just fumbling through life most of the time. Even, you can have success or whatever. You can be wealthy. You can take care of business or whatever. But most people spend most of their life in the dark. They just don't know what the hell's going on.
And the minute they do start to feel feelings, they usually try to bury them.
Exactly.
And now we're back to bourbon.
Hence the bourbon. I was going to say the same thing.
Now we're back to bourbon and its purpose on earth. I know. Smells great.
It does smell great.
Well, you can just have a sip if you want. Only if you want. No pressure.
Well, I have to make sure I have enough time to sober up before my show. It's 3:55, so my show's at 8, so I should be sober.
More than enough.
Right. Well, plus I ate some food.
You did, so
fine.
Since we're talking about drinking, I'll ask you some lighthearted questions now. When you're on a movie set or theater for a really long time, do you have favorite snacks?
I don't eat much at work. I find it hard to eat when I'm at work. There's something, it kind of grosses me out. I don't feel like you should be digesting while you're doing a scene. Like, I just want to be as empty as possible. But then when I'm done, I go, like, pig out. Which is bad because that means I usually wind up eating a lot late at night, which is very unhealthy.
Well, you're 6'4", so one would never know.
Yeah. Well, I try and balance it with, some calisthenics and whatnot.
So I was mentioning Martin Scorsese, with whom you have worked because he directed in Boardwalk Empire. Yeah. And I always tell people, because I get this question all the time, since my show is The Dinner Party, who would you have at a dinner party? And I always say immediately Martin Scorsese, because I just find him fascinating, and I would really like to hear him speak on how he sees life. I'm wondering who you would have at a dinner party, living or dead.
Well, he would be up there. I mean, when I went in, the way I got Boardwalk Empire was I went to a meeting with him. He was there, and Terrence Winter was there. It was at the Waldorf in New York City. I was working on another movie at the time, and I had been at work all day long, and I was very, very tired. We had a very early call. Excuse me. And so we were shooting up in Yonkers, and we drove down into the city. The traffic was terrible. Someone was calling every 5 minutes, like are you close? They really want to go, you know. And I was just like having a panic attack in the car. I was like, please don't go, please don't go. And I get there, and Scorsese just starts like talking, like it just encyclopedic knowledge about everything, you know, the period, you know, who this guy is, where he comes from, his vision of the show, European history, American history, and it's just like exploding out of him. And I'm so tired and so stressed out that I kept checking to make sure that I wasn't like drooling on myself, because I just was like, I felt like I was in some sort of hypnotic trance or something. And I just kept nodding my head, and I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, that sounds great, yeah. And then Terry was like, so you want to do it or what? I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. I wasn't even quite sure what I was agreeing to. I was so tired, but the reason I tell that story is I'd always wished that I would maybe had been a little bit more lucid or able to enjoy that, which maybe would have been like a dinner situation, having dinner with them. But, you know, there's so many people I admire in the world. I mean, I would love to. It's a really long list. I mean, I would love to sit down with Obama. I think that'd be fascinating. Have dinner with that guy. I'm so curious about him.
I don't know how he remains so calm.
Yeah,
and polite.
Yeah, he's almost kind of it seems like he should become like a monk or something.
He's got real zen going on.
Yeah, but the choices he's been making recently, that trip he took to the Arctic, I was very moved by that. And who knows whether, you know, at the end of the day it's going to make a huge difference or not. But the fact is he did it, you know.
Right. I
was very moved by that. But in terms of like filmmakers, you know, one of my favorite filmmakers is Michael Haneke. I don't know. He made he made this movie Amour that I think is one of my favorite movies. But he's from Europe, and he doesn't really speak English. I met him once, and I was so excited to meet him, but I couldn't have a conversation with him. Really, we just said hello.
Well, see, this is the great part of a fantasy dinner party. People suddenly speak English, even when they naturally don't.
That's right. Kieslowski, too. He's Kieslowski, a Polish filmmaker. He made
Red, White, and Blue?
Red, White, and Blue, Double Life of Veronique, Decalogue.
Right.
I would have loved to work with him. I had coffee with David Lynch once. That was pretty cool.
And what was that like?
He's just talked about transcendental meditation all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm still disturbed by the movie Blue Velvet.
Oh, yeah.
Just to tell you, like, how piercing his films can be.
Yeah. No,
I think I was in college then.
Yeah. That's a great movie. Yeah, I'd like to work with him. I don't know. I guess he's doing that Twin Peaks again, man.
Right. Well, our salmon is gone.
Yes.
We're still sipping on bourbon. We haven't really done too much damage there, but our salmon is gone and our salad is gone. I do want to say before this interview ends, because I promised Kirsten that I would talk about a Red Orchid Theater, which I want to do because I believe in a Red Orchid Theater and I want to support small theater.
Yes.
So an exiting question. Before I ask it, I'm first going to read the mission statement for Red Orchid Theater because I think it is so engaging as mission statements go. A Red Orchid Theater is an ensemble of artists dedicated to the proliferation of live theater in the modern world. We believe that theater is the greatest sustenance for the human spirit and approach our work with a palpable sense of social compassion, aesthetic rigor, and honesty. By presenting new plays from all over the world and by reviving insightful works from the past that bear new relevance today, we aim to seek out and build new audiences for the modern stage. I think that is a huge goal. Are you guys doing that?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to say. I mean, our neighborhood is changing so much. Sometimes it's a little disconcerting. It's just bars, more and more bars, and like more and more TVs with sporting events on them, and you wonder because we're tucked in the back of this building, and you don't necessarily. For a long time, people didn't even really know we were there. I mean, and this is after we had been there for like 15, 16 years. People were still like, I don't know, there's a theater back there.
That's right.
So it's hard to feel like we're, but I do think, like, Pilgrims Progress, for example, is a very complex, it's a beautiful play, but it is not an easy pill to swallow. And most of the run is already pretty much sold out, which is a wonderful thing. And so to that end, I guess we are doing that. Now, part of the reason that happened is because I, am on TV or whatever, and people are like, oh, I want to go see that guy who's on TV. And hopefully those people won't walk into the theater and be like, what the heck is this?
You mean I have to feel feelings?
There's the guy from the TV, but I don't know what the heck anybody's talking about. But I feel like, in terms of young people, getting young people involved in theater, we've had a wonderful youth program, and we've mounted a lot of shows with kids, with some great kids that have a lot of talent, and those shows have been some of our most interesting shows. We did a production of the Iliad. Speaking of Greeks, the Iliad with all teenagers. And
that had to be great.
Yeah, it was a great show.
Yeah.
So I think we're helping in that regard. I don't know, but we're having. I'm supposed to mention this big gala we're having.
Yes, I was going to do the same. Yeah. So you are on with Pilgrims Progress November 4th through December 13th, and we think tickets are sold out, but everybody can check the theater because there's always tickets at the last minute, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Don't be discouraged from trying to get in because. There will be tickets available.
That's right. But for sure we know that there are tickets for the November 14th gala. And Michael's going to be there. It's going to be at Sunda, I think.
Yeah, it's a hot night.
Yes.
We always have a lot of fun.
Yes.
And
how much are tickets? Do we know?
We have such a hard time saying money numbers out loud at our theater. It's if you want to come for the whole kit and caboodle, which includes a great dinner at Sunda, and go to the club afterwards, underground, and party, dance all night long, fun events and everything. It's $300 ruse for that, and I'll come sit next to you and talk to you. We can get to know each other, whatever.
You can see that picture on his cell phone. If you get that ticket, you can see that picture on his cell phone from early 90s.
Exactly. There is also an option to just come to the underground dance party, which is cheaper. How much cheaper, I'm not exactly sure. But the answers to all of these questions can be found on our website, I'm pretty darn sure.
That's right, and that's a redorchidtheater.org.
Yes.
And I want to say that's theater ending in an R-E.
That's correct, yes.
A Red Orchid...
The old-timey spelling.
Theater.org, yes. Theater ending in R-E. You can get all the information. November 14th, Michael Shannon, he's in town. Your chance to hang out with him and support the wonderful Red Orchid Theater, which is a beautiful, beautiful theater. Tell me when you co-founded that. What was the year again?
It was 93.
Okay, so 93 people. We want to keep theater alive in Chicago.
Yes.
Michael Shannon, thanks for being with me here today.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
I can pour you more bourbon if you'd like.
No, you're bad influence. I get in trouble.
Thanks again. Michael Shannon of Pilgrims Progress, playing November 4th through December 13th at Red Orchid Theater. Thanks for joining me on the Dinner Party Podcast on WGNplus.com. I'm Elysabeth Alfano. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DinnerPartyCHGO and at WGN Radio and on Facebook at The Dinner Party and at Elysabeth Alfano. To subscribe to this podcast, find The Dinner Party on iTunes and on SoundCloud. And if you want to send me an email about today's podcast or anything else, find all my info at thedinnerparty.tv. The Dinner Party producer is Michael Heidemann, and the original music is created by the Websters. Thanks for listening today, and join me on the next Dinner Party podcast where the best conversations happen over dinner.